The Calgary Police Service Economic Crimes Unit has charged a man with defrauding his employer of nearly $5 million. It is believed that between September 2007 and November 2011, the suspect created 3 shell companies that were used to defraud an oil and gas company he was working for at the time. He used these shell companies to create more than 91 fictitious invoices for supplies and services that were not genuine transactions. Investigators believe that the suspect made $4,929,686 from the fictitious invoices. The employer fired the man in 2011 and contacted the police in 2013 following an internal investigation. Following nearly a 2-year-long investigation, Ian Wilson Fisher, 53 of Calgary, has been charged with fraud over $5,000 and money laundering. He will next appear in court on Friday, September 11th, 2015. Any questions? I can't release that as they are a victim.
How, when you look at this in comparison to other cases, how detailed is this? I mean, was it impossible for them to find it beforehand, or what?
Fraud is always very complex and detailed in nature. With this, the individual, the suspect, the offender that was charged, was in a position of authority in the company, so anything that he did within that company wasn't really questioned. Essentially what he was doing was he created 3 different shell companies, and shell companies are companies that are created for illegitimate purposes. There's never any legitimate business that went through those shell companies. From there, work was done through the oil and gas company, and he double billed through these 3 shell companies, creating false invoices and then charging it back to the original oil and gas company that he worked for, to the tune of almost $5 million.
So the fraud was double billing then?
Right, false invoicing, which was essentially accomplished through double billing.
So any services were ever rendered? Were any of these services actually rendered?
None of the services were actually rendered. So anybody can go and register a company through land titles, or corporate registries. He went and registered these 3 separate companies, and there was never any legitimate services that were performed through those companies.
How did this come up? How did you guys hear about it?
Essentially what happened was there was suspicion that was created within the company itself. They completed an internal investigation which included a forensic audit of all of the accounting, so every single receipt and invoice that came through that company. They confirmed that suspicious activity. Actually went through civil proceedings first, which is very common in these situations, to regain some of the money, and then came to the Calgary Police Service to deal with the criminal allegations.
Were they successful on the civil?
Yes.
How much would they have recovered? You know?
I don't know that.
Is there anything that stands out as unusual?
You know what, I wouldn't say that it's unusual, but what we want to remind companies is that even if there is people in positions of authority, you should be questioning and doing random audits. Fraud is something that is very lucrative. There are a lot of greedy people out there, and really just be diligent in doing your checks, even if you are a business owner.
Is the accused still in custody?
No.
How long had he been with the company for?
He had been with the company for 4 years prior to the suspicion, or he had been doing this for 4 years. The invoices ranged from $8,000 on one invoice to over $100,000 on other invoices. So there were multiple invoices, like I said earlier, approximately 91 invoices. He was 7 years with the company and had been perpetrating fraud for 4 of those 7 years.
And you said he was in a position of authority. Can you elaborate a little bit?
He was one of the co-founders of the oil and gas company.
Any other questions?
Is there any chance of any other charges?
No more charges are pending.
Anybody else being investigated?
No, nobody else being investigated, and there are no other victims.